In the heart of the state-of-the-art, at the dawn of the next stage in entertainment, you found No Proscenium.
You have indeed found No Proscenium, the voice of everything immersive. I'm your host, Noah Nelson, and welcome to episode 404. This week, Mike Michaels of Austin's Eureka Room talks to us about making a room in his house as bright as the sun, roadside attractions, and Austin's immersive scene. We have a lot of fun. Before we jump in, allow me to direct your attention to the show notes, where you'll find links to what we've been up to at NoPro this week, including our latest Immersive 5 interview, this time with Janine Willett of Third Rail Projects to mark Third Rail's latest collaboration with Albany Park Theater Project in Chicago, the celebrated Port of Entry, which Patrick wrote about last week. The review rundown this week features takes on installation pieces in Montreal and 2 reviews out of SIGGRAPH's VR Theater. Meanwhile, on LinkedIn... Wait, what? That can't be... Oh yeah, I did do that. Meanwhile, on LinkedIn and on Everything Immersive, you'll find the return of Everything Immersive this week. Our roundup of news, hot ticket drops, opinion pieces, and more ready to be read and shared on your platform of choice. This week, the Washington Post asks if American theater as we know it should die, a New York City indie immersive space throws in the towel, and London's Phantom Peak eyes a westward expansion, and more. All this, plus this month's call sheet keeps growing. There's like 16 listings in that sucker now, including submission deadlines for Indiecade's returning Night Games program in LA and the Peabody Awards. This week, NoPro has been brought to you in part by C-Tickets, sponsor of this year's Next Stage Immersive Summit, Making an Impact Pillar. C-Tickets has proudly supported thousands of clients across the globe in areas as diverse as historic attractions like Stonehenge, immersive theater like the Burnt City, and important cultural touchstones like LA Pride. Thanks again to C-Tickets for helping us with the big swing of the Next Stage this year. Of course, none of this, and I mean none of this, is possible without our Patreon backers. And the churn, it's real. To keep NoPro growing, we've got to expand the subscriber base. That's just fact. Right now, we're on a campaign to get our backers up to 450, and we still need 6 new backers to hit our next milestone of 425. If you rely on what we do, please hit up patreon.com/noproscenium. It not only powers the podcast and websites for NoPro and Everything Immersive, it also gets you into our member-only Discord. You'll find a whole community of creators and fans there. The news breaks first there. So much of what we do is roundups of what's going on in the Discord these days. Backers can link their Patreon accounts to get access. If you're already a backer, help us spread the word. So many of you do, but a lot of you don't. Or drop a review on iTunes or your podcatcher of choice and share the articles you find useful on your social media platform of choice. It helps immensely. We are always No Proscenium, except on Insta and on Threads, where we are no_proscenium. As always, big thanks to our sustaining backers: Samuel Mustry, Chris Woolman, Samantha Davison, Eric Shamlin, Elaine, Daryl, John Boulette, Cameo Wood, Jay Bushman, Jerome Joseph Genties, Kurt Collins, Wynn Thorne, Ryan, David Bassick, Richard Ayers, Lonnie Hanson, Lecker LeCool, the Ministry of Peculiarities, and Jan Budman. And as always, we're on the lookout for community partners who are up for working out special deals for our backers. Hit me up at noah@noproscenium.com for details. And with that, let's get into this week's show. Joining us now is Mike Michaels, the founder of Austin's Eureka Room, a 100 square foot room of absurd and fun participatory activities that's been delighting folks in Austin in one form or another since 2018. Mike, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Noah. I'm so glad to be here. I'm very honored, and I've been very excited about doing this. So thank you.
Oh, we had a great conversation, I think it's a couple of months ago now. Aaron Riley at University of Texas, Austin, introduced us because you've been pulling the Austin immersive community together. And that's always something that's really of interest to me. And I want to get into that in a bit. But let's start with the Eureka Room. For those who haven't been, what is it?
Yes. The Eureka Room is a bit hard to describe, but generally I describe it as the mission first, and that's to help adults feel joy and connection through this charming absurdity that I'm going after. Physically, it's like you said, it's a 100 square foot room. It's got about 30,000 LEDs on the walls behind some opaque plexi. It's got a projection screen and a sound system. Experientially, it's sort of like it's been compared to participating in a Japanese game show or a party game or being in a meme. Uh, and it consists of different 5 to 10, 20-minute programs of human interaction. Sometimes there's props, and it lasts about an hour.
What got you making this in the first place? Because the original iteration was at your house, and then you've moved it elsewhere. Like, why did you want to build this thing? And that
Yeah.
sounds like so many lights and projections and like a lot of technology going into a little room.
Yeah. So I have always loved roadside attractions and unique experiences. I worked in an amusement park in high school and some of college. It's just kind of been my thing. I had a company in Austin that showed, it was like an event guide company, shows you when events and attractions happen in Austin. I've done that for years. So always had an interest in attractions, had a bunch of ideas I've played with over the years. Um, and then I kind of just decided I want to do my own more permanent thing instead of one-off events. And the Eureka Room was maybe born about 11 years ago, and it was put on the shelf a bunch because I couldn't quite get it to work. But then in 2018, I really decided to go for it more, and I hired an engineer to help me sort of develop it. And it was originally just supposed to be a projection screen with some ambient lighting, and then we got ambitious, I guess, and we ordered we ordered a bunch of LEDs, and then when they showed up, they were actually double the density of which we thought they were going to be. So we went from 10,000 LEDs like 20, and then when I moved to this newer space out of my house last year, we expanded it 50%. So now it's like 30 or 40. I don't. It's a lot. It's like as bright as the sun if you turn it all the way up.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I just love this kind of weird interactions, and it was a nice platform to be able to have different experiences that may just be 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes and play with them and just see what happens. And a lot of it's evolved just through feedback from visitors. I mean, it took many years just to get to where it was good. It was terrible for a very long time, but now it's pretty solid. So I'm pretty happy with it.
I want to come back to that theme of like it was terrible and now it's good.
I can talk a lot about that
in a second. Oh, good, because we're going to. But you used a term that doesn't get mentioned on this show enough by people, which is roadside attraction. And I'm also guilty of that. I don't talk about roadside attraction too much. So like what, and I'm not asking you to define. I think we all know what a roadside attraction is. We've all encountered one. What is it about a roadside attraction though? What's the lure there? What do you have like an origin story with roadside attractions, or was it? Yeah.
I mean, the ones I like the best are the ones that it's like one person has this insane passion project that is probably not a good idea in the first place, and then they take it way too far. It's just like
I don't know anything about such things.
So, I mean, it's just, to me, it's just like, I don't know. It's something like really just seeing, I don't know, some weird aspect of the human spirit where like somebody's just so obsessed, they do this thing and you go see it and you're just like, wow, they spend so much time on this. And usually it's amazing because they have spent so much time on it. And there's the ones where there's, their businesses trying to pull in customers from the highway, the kind of more traditional. And those are great too. I mean, it's just something unique, and even those, they usually come, I think, from the owner. Somebody's got an idea. It's got a personality. It doesn't have to exist, but it does, and I think that's just awesome. So, yeah.
Do you have a particular favorite out there in the world,
Oh man, I don't
or like a
know.
trip you took where you're like, oh, I hit like so many of them.
Yeah, well, there's a place I always recommend. It's not really a roadside attraction. It's like a theme park. But first, I'll say where I grew up. I grew up in Northeast Ohio, near Kent
Mm.
State, and there's a place there called Mike's Place. No relation to me, where it's just like this restaurant that just kind of evolved over the years, and it's got like an X-wing fighter out front. It's a banquet room. It's like a homemade X-wing fighter, of course. It's got a
Still,
yeah. I mean, it's got a
the original
banquet.
ones were homemade, just very small scale. You know.
Yeah, yeah. The banquet room is this castle. There's a catapult on the roof. There's a bus inside. Like every single thing on the menu has like at least 20 strips of bacon. It's just like the place is just like clearly like
It's funny when you mentioned like X-wing, castle, catapult, bus. My brain actually went to Fortnite, the video game that's like the Monty Hall style, like every single IP in there. And I'm like, yeah, this sounds like a Fortnite map as a restaurant, except clearly it's like 40 years old or something like that.
yeah. It's been around for a while. Yeah, and actually one of my good high school friends who I worked with at the amusement park works there and has worked there since. And yeah, the place is just it just has so much personality. You can tell like the owner was just like, I'm gonna do what I want to do, and this is it. And people respond to it. Enough people.
Yeah.
Keep in business for that many years. The other place I want to mention, and this place is like great. I can't even. It's a theme park. It's in Japan. It's called Huisten Bosch. Everyone should go there if they can. It's it. I first heard about it in Wired magazine years ago. There's an article about a hotel run by robots, and down towards the end of the article, they mentioned it was part of a theme park, and I was like, "What's that?" And so I looked that up, and there's this theme park that was built, I think, in the '90s, and it's themed like Holland because the Japanese have the history with the Dutch,
Yeah.
and there's like
They do.
real brick buildings and canals and windmills and tulips, and it was all there.
And robots because Japan.
Well, so yeah, so it was like more like just like
How do you spell
Holland.
this? How do you spell this?
Yes, HUIS. That's one word. TEN,
HUIS.
and the next word is TEN, like the number 10. And
Uh-huh.
Bosch, I think it's BOSCH.
Okay, I gotta look
And
this up.
it is great, and that's the name I think of the palace, a palace in Holland. So anyhow, this place goes out of business in the early 2000s, around 2008, a recession,
Oh.
and somebody decides to buy it, or some company decides to buy it and make it a high-tech theme park. So that's when the robots came in. But they didn't change it from being Holland. So they just took the tulips and covered them in LEDs. They took the windmills and they're covered in LEDs. The canals have LEDs in them. There's still
Oh
all
my
this
God.
like attractions. It's just the most bizarre place. And it's not the easiest to get to. I mean, it's not like it's anywhere near Tokyo. You got to kind of dedicate a couple days if you're gonna get down there and do it.
Yeah, it's in
But it is,
Sasebo
yeah,
in Nagasaki, right?
yeah. I think it's
Yeah, I'm looking it up on Wikipedia.
Okay, yeah,
Like
it's
you're
down the
describing this, and I'm
Fukushima
like,
part
oh,
of it.
this
Yeah,
sounds fascinating. And
yeah.
I
The
gasped because I
webs.
saw a picture of like all the LEDs, like it lit up at night.
It is
Like,
insane, and this is probably before like LEDs were that cheap. They've been, yeah. It's just there's so many bizarre things about that place. Like they have They don't have really rides, but they have these attractions that are just. It's hard to explain. I could take up the whole podcast talking about them, but go to the website. It's great.
I'll put this in the show notes, everybody.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
all the themed entertainment people right now are rolling their eyes like, I can't believe Noah didn't know about Huisten Bosch. And it's like,
Yeah,
oh, well, guess what? None of you bring it up on the regular, so maybe look to yourself. You're the problem. No. Oh, this is gorgeous. Oh, wow. Yeah, this is really. This
It's
is
special. It's special. Yeah.
And yeah, like they recreate like the Dutch Canal like neighborhood action. So
Yeah.
like it's just like those row houses next to a canal, which is
Yeah.
already wowzers.
And it's not a facade. It's real. I mean, people live there in parts of the park. Like it's bricks. It's not just like a fake front.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So it's really
That's wild.
It's a really fascinating place. Yeah. And just yeah. Don't know why I have not seen more about it.
Sky Carousel. They've got a triple decker carousel.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is
They had.
this is incredible.
Yeah, they had this. I think it was 5D or 7D
They have
ride,
all the
and
D's. Yeah.
but it was like D for like delightful and delirious. Like it was just like it's just
The
the
three
whole
dimensions
language
of
thing
space, the
also
one
makes it
dimension
interesting.
of time, and then three extra dimensions of delight, delirium, and death. Wait, no, that's the endless. So,
Yeah.
and yes,
So,
I know delight and delirium, guys. I know. All right. So, sorry. I'm doing footnotes live on the show now. The show is entering into its final form now we've crossed the 400th episode barrier.
yeah, congrats on that, by the way. That's
Oh,
amazing. That is amazing.
that's just somewhere around I think episode 40, like I was just like, well, I guess it'll take more energy to quit now than to just keep doing it. And then cut to 7 years later it's still going on.
Wow.
Part of me wonders if like the goal should be like, let's wrap it at 500, it's like gives us 2 more years, and then
No,
like,
no, no.
well, no, we'd obviously go do something else. Like, wouldn't it be the end? It would just be like, full functional reboot. But don't worry, everybody. This is the idlest of idle thoughts. But you never can tell. So one supposes that the Eureka Room started as the idlest of idle thoughts, and then kept being intrusive, and then became a thing, and then you said it was bad, and now it is good. So, talk to us about your arc there.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't sure what it was going to be. I kind of had a vague idea of what I wanted it to be, but I wasn't sure. And
What was that vague idea? What
the
was
vague
that
idea was a
sense?
room with like a projection screen and activities for people to do. And it would have this feeling of surrealness and fun and joy and playfulness and for grown-ups. I mean, one of the big things with the Eureka Room is I kind of want to help dispel the idea that all strangers are dangers. All of our groups are mixed groups unless you buy all the tickets, and I think it's really great and or it's really needed to help bring people together, because so much stuff is done from home and everything can be done from home. And so that wasn't maybe my clearest thought at the beginning, but that's kind of, I think it's been there all along to help bring people together and have them connect like that. And but the first version was me hanging a whole bunch of black plastic on my walls, and it looked really creepy. And a friend came over and looked at it, and then looked at me and said, "Are you going to murder me?" And it was just like this, like terrible.
If you did it in Los Angeles, it would have been a hit.
Timing and placement is everything. Yeah, so I just couldn't, and then the projector was interior and it was lighting up the room, and it's just I couldn't quite figure out how to work it. And then it was one of those ideas that just wouldn't go away. So like a few years later, I'm still thinking about it. So I'm like, okay, let me try it again. And it was kind of at that point going to be this mindfultainment idea I had, where I do a lot of meditation and mindfulness stuff. And it's like, well, what if we made this more accessible? What if we had this be more fun,
Yeah.
And which, it turned out to be a pretty unholy marriage. But
I love that you said it and put it that way. Yes, it's true. It's true.
It was, yeah. So, but I was still going down that path, and then, like I said, I met the engineer. I was just going to have ambient lights. All of a sudden, we had this huge room, it was a full structure. There's an art studio tour in Austin called the East Austin Studio Tour in the fall. I was like, I'm going to be part of that. I made a couple programs. One was like this kind of starts off kind of like a meditation, and then there's this bird that's a terrible sketch of a bird, and then all of a sudden you're high-fiving a lot. Like it's really, it's hard to explain unless you do it, and maybe not even then is it easy to explain. But
yeah, I get the meditation to the bird, but then the high-fiving, I'm like, okay, I don't know where the high-fiving is coming from, but that's okay. That's okay.
Next, whenever you're in town, I
take me through the original. Can you still do the old routines?
That one's still there.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, but after that, I made the mindfultainment stuff more in earnest, and that was too serious. And people came, and the people who wanted something serious were like, "Why is it so weird?" And the people who wanted weird, like, "Why is it so serious?" And it was just it was just a total bomb. So I was discouraged about that, and I eventually just some people were like, Mike, you're just better at making the weird stuff, so just make the weird stuff, and I enjoy that more. So I went that direction, developed some other programs in that vein, and that's really been it. It's just kind of this weird, surreal, absurd stuff. Um, and I'm sorry, I keep using the same words. It's hard to describe.
No,
It's
well, that's why. I mean, like weird also has like dimensions, right? So like there's weird, and then there's weird, and then there's the YRD spelling of weird, and
yeah.
like, but there's and there are ways in which it connects to the mindfulness element, right? There's something about um it's like ecstatic states are a thing, right? And meditation is a path to an ecstatic state, ecstasis, putting yourself out of your normal frame of mind. Dancing, ecstatic dancing, or like tripping out on visuals, or or all the other things that people do to like put their normal frame of mind into a different state of being. And weird is a big path for that, right?
Mhm.
Weird invites you to walk around outside the normal confines of your usual thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think the weird and the playfulness. I mean, my brand is more G-rated. It's. I mean, like I said, it's for adults, but there's not. It's just more of a bizarre, weird thing. And like I think to your point, one of my favorite video testimonials I got from customers is I had no idea what was going on, but I had a lot of fun. And it's kind of like, okay, you're just in this other state where you know a big part of my job is how do I take people from just showing up to getting their buy-in to where they're willing to do high fives and think they're a bird. uh, you know so it's that's a lot of the work and thought I put into it, is to get into that state where it feels just they're peaking out at those
This is
feelings.
reminding me. I'm getting it was a non-tech version of this, but there was and we had her on the show. Olivia Hamilton, I believe, is her name. I'm going from memory. And she's a performer, and I think a choreographer as well is part of her deal. And she was running an event in LA called Play, and it would just be this like a chance for people to just come and play. And I went once, and it was in some ways like the most absurd possible experience, because and here we go with the LA story, everybody. Sorry. So I went to play, and of course, her partner is Damien Chazelle, the filmmaker. So his last movie was like the Babylon movie, but like he's known best for La La Land, right? He's the La La Land guy, like the Whiplash guy. And he was there, but also there was like Toby Maguire, who's like in their friend circle, was there. And like we were mostly all silent, and like we were playing charades. And at one point I'm sitting there going like, oh, I'm playing charades with Spider-Man. This is such a weird only in LA thing. But we were also
Yeah.
like, we were just there being,
Hmm.
kids with each other. And this kind of the permission to step out of our adult personas and get back, not to our high school personas, not to our junior high, not even to our, elementary, like to our kindergarten personas. And just eh, and there's a gentleness to that, right? Like let go of, the cruel forms you have had to endure or taken on, and get back to just pure play, something on
Hmm.
the level of innocence. And yeah, like that. The tone sits with me, even if the specifics, other than like the charades bit,
Hmm.
like and going down a slide, like those two things are the things that like like stick with me in terms of what we actually did. But there's just this kind of color, if you will, like in my mental cloud that is related to that experience. And I'm like, yeah, like that spirit of play. um
Yeah, yeah. I think it's weird. Like in the marketing, I don't use the word play a lot,
mm,
and because I mean it's basically I'm creating this place for adults to play. But if you have a business advertised as adult play,
Mm-hmm.
it has all these other connotations,
Exactly.
right? And
Exactly.
so,
Yeah.
but it's a shame that like there's not, and it's a lot of times it is associated with being a kid again. I hear a lot, felt like a kid again, but I'm always like, I wonder, why isn't there just like a solid, like there is an adult version of play, and we don't have to say, you know, it can stand on its own as, this is what it feels like as an adult to play. And what I'm trying to do is this kind of semi unstructured play, and we obviously have sports and things like
Yeah.
that, but having this sort of unstructured play for adults is I think rarer, but like a lot of people really enjoy it. I mean, it's a risk, it's an ask, right? You're
Yeah.
like gonna play. There's no structure. Who knows what's gonna happen?
There's no
It's
winners. There's no score.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's, um, but yeah, when people who are looking for it show up and they get to do those sorts of things at the Eureka Room, it's like I they just love it. I mean, I don't want to pat myself on the back. Not everybody loves it, but like I feel like, okay, that's what I'm going for. And when I hit that and it lights people up, I love that. That's just fantastic.
So Aaron connected us because you've been connecting people in Austin and doing meetups there. And
Yeah,
I mean, one, I wanted you on the show because of that great conversation we had, but also like make people aware that if they're in Austin or around Austin, that like you're doing that work, that kind of work that we're always doing too. And so I wondered if you could talk a little bit about, what the Austin sort of immersive, interactive, creative scene is like. Labels aside,
sure.
we know that all the different kind of work that goes into these types of experiences.
Sure. I First of all, I don't see myself as the spokesperson. I will give you my thoughts.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
I've been working on this stuff. I've done some like absurdist dinners. I've done some like decathlons for slackers. I've done events called like, I got a bag of wigs, let's wear them. And it's like these sorts of things. And I've just always wanted to, I have some friends in my circle that kind of do these sorts of things that help me out, are great. And I always just wanted to find more of those folks. I mean, it's been years, and finally last fall, I was like, I'm gonna make this group I've been dreaming of, and so I just started reaching out to people I knew and some people I thought might be interested, and yeah, we've been having monthly meetings for about 6 to 8 months now. It's been great. The idea is to just kind of have a place for people to meet each other, whether they're makers or whether they're you know artists, whether they're theater people, just whatever, under the broad umbrella of immersive or experiences. I call it the IRL, Experience Creators Society. So we mainly focus on things that are in real life versus maybe AR and that kind of stuff. But I mean, everyone's welcome if they have an interest in it. And I've just been really amazed that like pretty much everybody I mentioned it to has an interest in it. Like it just it's resonated, and that's been great. And people have joined, and they're like, and it's free to join. They just they come to the
Yeah.
meetings and they want to help contribute. We've started this like doing field trips outside of our monthly meetings. We have also started sort of a immersive lending library because people in this group have all kinds of weird stuff sitting in their house from projects that were purchased once, and now like, what am I going to do? Like somebody had like 24 like monk cloaks, and they announced that, and like all of a sudden like 5 people immediately were like, I want them. So um so yeah, I'm not really. Let me get back to your question though. So I started this group, and yeah, I don't feel like it's a huge community, but it's a very friendly one. I mean, there's we're still trying to identify more people to join the group. I think there's about 30 people now. Maybe get 15, 20 people to show up.
That's a
And
pretty good number, right? Like, I mean, I'll
I'm
tell
happy
you,
with
like,
it. Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you in LA, like, the when we would have a meetup, or when we do have a meetup, like maybe we'll on a high end, we might get like 100 people. And like if we're doing like a crossover with the themed entertainment folks, we might get like 150 people. Like but that's again like on the high end if we haven't had one in a long time and everyone decides to show up. But like when we were doing things on the fairly regular, like, and particularly in the early days, it was like 15, 20 people in my apartment, like while I was cooking brunch. Right. And I think a lot of people like to go back to that, but I don't have a good kitchen anymore for cooking for lots of people. So sorry, everybody. You wonder why it's not happening that way anymore? Look at my kitchen and you'll know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would love for it to grow, but am very happy with where it's at now. I kind of really it's kind of been an experiment. I've made up this structure where we start off with this part that's called something awesome happens, and then we have a speaker, and then we have this ending where we call big finish, and there's some announcements in there too. But something awesome happens. The big finish are just like a minute long. I'm always begging for volunteers. They can do anything. We'll tell you it's awesome. We'll tell you it's big. And a lot of times it's participatory. Somebody will come up with something. It's like a minute long. You can have a little bit more time. It can be total crap, and but people come up with some really cool stuff, and I think it really has helped the meetings. Like because I didn't want to just have a meeting like, okay, here's a meeting, we have a speaker. I wanted it to be special, and also like we're experienced creators. Let's do something right now. Let's make it, and I think that's really helped keep people coming back because it's like, oh, this is special. At least I hope they think it's special. I think it's special. I'm very grateful for the people who show up and help out.
Well, having moments like that, like, things then reflect like the nature of the work, right? Like that I think is a critical element. And you can, as someone who like organizes like some of the summits and whatnot, like there's always that tension between trying to like get down to the business of it all, trying to like make sure everyone's connected, giving people things that are familiar, but also trying to get the special material in, get the stuff that's kind of fun and funky. And in any given year, you find yourself with like, a different mix of that. And like some years you nail it and some years you don't. But you're constantly, and you're always like running up against just like, how much space and time do you have? Which is why like a more regular format, like, I think it's, no shock to anyone to say like, we're looking again, like, okay, can we get back to quarterly in Los Angeles, like get back to like quarterly or something in New York? I said a conversation with the New York team, and like, there's actually a couple of different ideas that are percolating right now, like that may lead to like even more than quarterly. Because the flip side to it is always, and then everyone's got like, projects of their own, like, and you don't want it to just become like, oh, we're all like all the energy goes into like, we're doing meetings, right? It's like, oh, we want to get everyone kind of like jazzed up, give an excuse to like get everyone together. But like, what are some of the, I mean, for the folks whose work is like out there, and you can talk about like,
Sure.
what are like some of the things going on in Austin, that members of your community are doing?
Yeah. Well, let's see. I'll talk a little bit about maybe the people who've spoken. Last time we had my friend Wendy Mitchell. She runs this thing called the Stuffed Animal Rescue Foundation. She's been doing that for 10 years. It's hard to explain. Basically, she saves these stuffed animals from wherever, maybe Goodwill, maybe on the street. She cleans them up. She's a writer. So she writes all these backstories for them. And then there's this extensive application if you want to adopt these stuffed animals that you can fill out. And it is extensive, and people put a lot into it. And she has about a couple years ago, she set up a brick and mortar in Austin, and she's open 12 to 4 on Saturdays. It's free. If you're in Austin, you should check it out. She also does stuffed animal repairs and some other stuff. But when she does repairs, it's a whole experience because she does this whole telemedicine appointment. So she gets online, and then like people are like, oh, the dog did this. I think the dogs are keeping her in business. But the dog, and then she writes up this long, medical, pseudo medical thing using lots of medical terms about what she's going to do. And Sometimes there's like spa days, you can hire her. And so it's a really unique thing. And she's like all in on this. And it's just, it's super cool. Uh, uh, so that's one thing. Uh, Before her, we had Anne Armstrong, another friend of mine. She does this thing called the Auditory Society, which is a it's how it, basically it's people. She wants to people to take in the natural environment in the urban world.
Mm.
And so she's found these strange looking trees that might look like something, might look like a face or a arm or something like that. And she's got this beautiful map that she's made, and she's got an Instagram account where she posts pictures of these weird trees. And she'll do, meetups where people go around and look at the trees. And it's just a really fascinating experience. Like she has a very unique take on these things. And so um, that's something really cool that's going on. We had Erin, who you mentioned, talk about all the cool stuff that her program is doing. They put on, I don't know if it's every semester or every other semester, they have maybe every year they have a big project with the students. And she's talked about that. We've got folks who do Halloween parties, haunted houses, escape games. Um, some of these folks are more, it's like a business. Other folks, it's more of a hobby. We're open to all. There's all different levels of people. There's people who are artists. There's Liza Fishbone does this thing where she and another person dress up as pigeons, and they deliver messages to people at parties. There's yeah, it's I would there's not maybe there's definitely not the sort of large scale things that you would see in LA or New York or in places like that. But there's a lot of people working on individual projects and smaller stuff that's really cool, and which is part of the reason I wanted to do this group to kind of get them together and hopefully let them grow it. Give them more of the resources they need. Whether it's people or connections or space. Space is always a big one.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and like a lot of the stuff, when an immersive scene is starting out, like it does start small, and because of a lot of the nature of the work is like, kind of like small connections or like small group experiences or one-on-one, experiences, and that sort of thing can balloon or just becomes like, kind of a lingua franca, and like gets more people wanting to make more stuff of that nature, right? Like the business, entertainment business as a whole is always obsessed with like, does it scale? How many thousands of people can we push through? And there's a heart of this work that is really about, the human to human connection, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the one-to-one that can't scale and maybe shouldn't scale in the sense of like, well, I can't clone, this performer and let the whole world have that experience of the performer. But we can take the methodology, we can take the kind of experience that's happening, and we can teach more people to do it. And that's how we scale it out, is like, now everyone's playing this way, like it's not just one group of people playing this way. It's like a folk game. It travels from person to group to group.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of things can be learned just from bringing people together and sharing the enthusiasm and sharing ideas and just watching things grow individually, even if it's at a smaller scale. Um, I had a thought. I lost it. Anyhow.
Sorry.
Sorry.
My fault.
No. But I know what it was. I would like to say, if anyone's in Austin listening to this and they're like, why haven't you invited me to your group, Mike? Please come to the group. There'll be, if you're like, oh my gosh, we have a really cool immersive thing. It's very possible I have missed it. So I did not mean to say that we have a small community. We may have awesome things out there. I would love to connect with you. Please reach out to me.
We're to this day, and it's different scale cities and whatnot, but like a city's a city. right? To this day, we're still discovering stuff in Los Angeles, right? We're still stumbling upon things. There's still people popping up, oftentimes thinking like, "Oh, I've made this, and I'm the only person making this kind of work." And it's like, oh, then we find them. We're like, "Oh, wow, you're doing this thing over here like this person." Like, no, not like this person. It's like, "Oh, yeah, no, like this person." Like sometimes they're defensive, and sometimes they're like elated to find like, "Oh my god, there really is a community here. I could connect in." And it it has the nature of sort of a indie band scene that way.
Mhm.
Some people are like, "Oh no, we invented industrial," and it's like, "Oh no, man, Skinny Puppy was around," like, or like, you never heard of Throbbing Gristle? That's funny. This album sounds like a ripoff. So, like things of that nature, right? Um, Noah shows his
Yeah.
musical tastes. Actually, irony, like, yeah, I'm more mainstream with my industrial than that, but that's anyway. Um, Sorry, the coffee's now hitting in. Now the brain's doing like the again footnotes live. Um, Speaking of Austin, which we've been doing this entire time from a certain point of view, there is a big cultural thing that happens every year in Austin, namely South by Southwest. Well, there's other cultural things happen in Austin, but there's a time when like the eye of the nation, particularly the internet nation, falls upon the city, and that is March, when the music festival's going on and the tech and everything. How does, if it does at all, how does that event um, intersect with the Austin creative scene, for this kind of experimental, experiential, or is it been a disconnect so far?
Um, I can only share my experience. I mean,
Yeah.
I love South by. I mean, it's great. I used to volunteer for years. I know people who work there. It's such an awesome event. Obviously, it's evolved over the years. Um, I think there's so much going on. I think it's hard to be heard, and that's regardless of whether you're coming in from out of town or whether you're already here.
Mm,
I've seen a lot of folks come to town, like, and spend a lot of money, but they can't compete with Microsoft or Google. They're
right.
buying up entire neighborhoods to throw a party. For me, yeah, I didn't really see much of a bump. In fact, it was kind of slow for us, and we're pretty much downtown. Uh, you know, I think there's probably things I could have tried to get a little more attention, but I think there's just so many things vying for attention. There's so many free events. There's so much free food, alcohol out there. If you've got the badges, and uh, which I think is great. I went to some of that stuff as well, but I would love to see more connection between those South by and then like the maker communities and things like that. I mean, that may just not be their jam that they're looking for, but I think there's a lot of intersection. We've got, I mean, the Eureka Room is music, film, and interactive. I mean, we are the three prongs of South by in a lot of ways. So I do think there's lots of opportunity there, but uh,
Well,
you know,
and there's also, I mean, when some of those big companies come in, like buy up a neighborhood, or they'll do like a large activation, and they're they're often leaning on, they'll be bringing in like a lot of talent from outside, the Austin area. They'll also be hiring local performers and hiring local folks, and I gotta imagine over the long arc of this, there 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 can be, or could be, kind of more interchange. I mean, Austin's had a video game scene like really
yeah,
strongly, like for, I mean, one of the seminal ones, right? Like, Richard Garriott,
yes,
Origin,
yes,
Lord
absolutely.
Lord British, and there was, I know when I came through, we talked about this when we talked, years ago. I've been to South by once, and I was doing a piece for NPR on like uh, indie games and South by Southwest, and I was there, to like do some coverage of South by. But the feature I was working on was, what was it? Juegos Rancheros, I think was it was
Mhm.
called. I can't remember. There was
Uh, Juegos
Juego,
Rancheros.
yeah,
Yeah.
Juegos
Yeah.
Rancheros. Like,
Games Rancheros. Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Instead of
Uh,
huevos, it's yeah.
yeah, right. So like, yeah, I know. Boy, it's been long enough, right? I'm sitting there going like, oh,
Yeah.
I remember it was like, and like the images of the people are in my head, and like being like, little. I think it was like a nightclub or something like that, like somewhere outside of like the South by area, like a couple of nights before things kicked off. But it was like, this gathering that was happening on the regular in the Austin game scene that I knew about because it had become influential on the indie game scene. Like it became sort of like the heart of the indie game scene in the country in a real way. And um the way that artistic community um you know discovered itself, self-organized, and was also interacting with South by for a while there. I think there still is a game component, but for a hot minute, like it started to rise and it was going to be like the fourth pillar for a hot minute. But then I think the pandemic sort of scuttled that. But there's still such energy there, and that industry is so vibrant still around Austin and in Texas as a whole, and the game industry and the live immersive industry, like the when those two can meet, it's where some alchemy really happens.
Mhm. Yeah, a lot of what they've learned over the years, and developed totally apply to immersive things, immersive experiences. There's so many principles that have been fleshed out that I've stolen from, whether it's like creating video game music, or whether it's just different aspects and mechanics of games. I'm reading those books and I'm pulling them into the Eureka room experiences. I mean, I steal liberally from the video games, and I don't even. I like games. I don't play them a lot, but I during the pandemic, I sat down and it's like, wow, look at all these crazy games out there now that just have just some really awesome concepts. And yeah, to bring some of those into the IRL space, yeah, that'd be great. I would love. Yes, if you're into video games and you are listening to this podcast and you live in Austin, please get hold of me if you want to come to our meetings.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, there's a few. Actually, I used to know more people there on that, and I think there's still a few folks around. Instantly, it's like, oh, I should go talk to him. I was like, oh no, he's in Berkeley now. So yeah, I would have. Zeb's not listening, and like I said, he's in Oakland now. But like, if he wasn't, if by some chance Zeb hit me up.
Or if you know Zeb and you live in Austin, and it sounds
Yeah,
interesting to you.
if you know Zeb, or if you know, well, that actually one of the great things, like they don't have to live in Austin or to know the people in Austin to like, do the thing. Like that was one of the, when I don't talk about this that often anymore, but like half the reason, not all, but half the reason we made the New York newsletter back when we had the different newsletters, right? Which I'm sure some people wish I would go back to doing different newsletters, but it's like, I am just one person. I'm the only one doing the newsletters anymore. We used to have 5 people doing the newsletters, and then then the pandemic hit, and then we still have those people, but they don't have the time to do the newsletter anymore. So now it's just the one newsletter. But like, we started the New York newsletter, in part because I had the theory that there were people in Los Angeles who looked for their performing arts information fully from their New York friends. They set their watch by what was going on in the New York Times, what was happening in New York, and what their New York friends thought was interesting. And that if we had a New York newsletter, we would have people's New York friends being like, hey, have you heard of this immersive stuff, to their LA friends? And then their LA friends would come and find us. And that, about 2 years after we did the New York, someone at an event or something like, oh, yeah, like I found you because my friend was in New York and they told me about the LA newsletter. I was like, it worked, like it's success. It was all worth it. And the same is true, I think, for any place where this is going on, right? And there's something of the Sometimes I feel ashamed. There's something of the Campbellian hero's journey. Sometimes that people got to go out, they got to leave where they are, go somewhere else, i.e., crash with a friend, discover something. This is amazing, and then go like, "Gee, I wonder if we have that at home." Or they go like, "I'm going to bring that home," and then they come back like, "Oh, we had this. We had this at home. I just didn't look for it." But that shifting of perspective is important, and so that's a long way of saying like, "Hey, if you've got friends in Austin, you should tell them about the Eureka Room. You should tell them about what Mike is doing, gathering folks for these meetings, and we can maybe help supercharge some of that action."
Yeah, I would love to talk to more people, and we have a really good group. I don't want to keep pushing the group, but I mean, it's free. Come on down, check it
I
out.
brought you on to push the group, so I don't know why you're worried about pushing the group.
We meet it. We started meeting. We were meeting at the Eureka Room. We outgrew that. We're now meeting at the Alamo Draft House Cinemas headquarters. It's a really cool room in this old high school that they have renovated and generously lend us for the meetings. So yeah, come check it out.
Rad. Well, Mike, thank you for hopping on the show. Thank you for telling us about the Eureka Room and roadside attractions and this theme park in Japan, which I've already texted to a friend who likes going to Japan, and which will be in the show notes. And
thank you. I want to say thank you for No Proscenium, the website. I got some of my first and best in visitors. There's a lot of people on there. Like a friend recommended it to me. I reached out. They were generous and posted about the Eureka Room on there. I even had a Q&A. It helped me get my first visitors. Super helpful. They're very encouraging. And I just want to say to your listeners that this happens when you contribute to the Patreon. It helps this happen. It's not just the podcast. I'm sorry. I know. I'm sorry. Your listeners can't see, but you're blushing. But I wanted to say this. I think it's really important. It's not just keeping the podcast alive. It helps people like me who are trying to do a little thing, get people connected to me, and that's really been helpful. And I'm a Patreon member now. You can do it for as little as $5 a month. All right, that's the ad. Sorry, Noah. I just felt really like I should do that. So.
No, I really do. I do appreciate it. Right? I think a lot of people know how embarrassed I am by like the whole nature of it all. But thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Noah.
It means a lot, and it's good to hear that. Like we, particularly because we never know who's reading or listening or finding or searching, and whatever we can do to send people's way, and then when they find something that's good and they connect and then they like it, and then they come back to us and let us know, and we're always on the lookout for all of that. And I would say just to everybody who's listening, and we got a fair number of the backers here, I think the even more important thing is, you might think we are omniscient when it comes to this stuff, and we're not. We really rely upon, all of our team members, but also the community to like come up and say, "Hey, there's a thing going on in Peoria," or "My friend heard about this." Like we need that more than anything, because that's the only way we're going to help people build audiences. That's the only way we're going to keep this going and make it so that this work isn't just about the gigantic attractions, the theme parks, and things that we love and that we're glad that exist, and that we wish nothing but health and more of. But it's the small work. It's the people experimenting. It's the connections that are being made at the edge of those big cultural boulders. I couldn't come up with a better metaphor. That make this more than some giant project of capital. It makes it a culture, and that's why we're in it. So,
well said. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. So, all right, I'll catch you soon, I hope.
All right, great.
Once again, I want to thank Mike for being our guest on the show this week. Check the show notes for the link to the Eureka room in Austin, along with more of what we talked about and everything I talked about at the top of the show. Speaking of one of the things I talked about at the top of the show, everything immersive this week. It is back. This is an experiment we're going to run for the next month and change. I've got a little bit of travel happening at the end of September. Maybe I'll dive into that in a second. So I got a little bit of travel happening at the end of September, so we might miss the last issue because I leave on a Wednesday and this thing comes out on a Thursday. But maybe also, maybe I'll work ahead. I don't know. It's a struggle. Also on well, anyway, no, I won't get it. That's too negative. But the point is, this experiment of ours, we're using LinkedIn's posting ability, like the ability to format a whole post, and putting it there, and I'm putting it on everything immersive itself. This was conceived as a LinkedIn first SKU for us, because look, we're, as much as we're anything, we're also kind of a bit of a trade rag. It's not what we necessarily set out to do, but our big event is an industry facing event, and industry and professional whatnot is what LinkedIn is 24/7. So us not having a robust presence there doesn't make sense. And one of the best ways to have a robust presence is to leverage every tool that thing has. So we're putting this thing out at least for the next 5-6 weeks. And if it does well and connects us to new people and brings in new readers, new listeners, new subscribers, most importantly, then we're going to keep on making it. And if it's a whole lot of effort and it doesn't get us move the needle at all, then we'll do something else. But there's one way to make this successful, and that is, if you're on LinkedIn for any reason, please follow No Proscenium there and share the LinkedIn version of Everything Immersive this week. It's going to help us out a lot. I know it's ridiculous, but here's the pledge. I'm going to make that thing as good as we can. It's going to be this mix of industry news, show announcements, opinion pieces, things that make you think, and things you want to know about. And also, for some folks, things are trying to get out into the world. So there's instructions in there on how to reach out to us if there's things you think should make it into the roundup. Of course, people are already pitching us things. My recommendation is always make the pitching tight. Someone dropped off like 4 paragraphs, and I'm like, I have 300 emails a day. I'm not going to read 4 paragraphs cold. So keep a short link, a couple of lines of text, and you're good to go. If my eyes start glazing over while I'm looking at an email, I'm probably not going to get to it for like another week. That is the nature of my brain. So EI this week on LinkedIn, spread the news. Literally, it's news, so spread it. It helps out a lot. We want to grow in a natural, organic way through the sweat of our brow and through what we sow. I mentioned for a hot second that I'm going to be I did mention I was going to be out of the country, but I am going to be out of the country. A couple of months ago, Melinda Lau of Whisper Lodge reached out. Melinda's from Singapore and is in Singapore these days. And the company she works with, Lucid, is doing they're doing a convening. They're doing a gathering in Singapore. And I'm going to be one of the speakers out there. Vince Cadlebeck of Meow Wolf's also going to be one of the keynote speakers. So it'll be fun to catch up with Vince in Singapore. And yeah, they're beaming me out, by which I mean it's a 17-hour flight. It's okay. I gotta charge my Switch. That reminds me, I gotta charge. I gotta charge the iPad for my mom. Just remember, I was like, I gotta do that right now. I gotta get off this thing and charge some electronics. Anyway, the point is, I'll be giving a talk out there, and if you happen to be in Singapore or want to know, I think the links are up for that event, and I'm going to dig those up and put those in the show notes as well. So that also means that last week of September, there'll either be some delays or guest hosts or some early content, never a repeat, but might be shorter form while we get things out. But we've got weeks to go before that happens. And I have a whole adjusting to teaching at CalArts thing, in the interim as well. Which reminds me I got to do my paperwork, which has come through, which is great. So that's it for me right now. Oh, but also none of this is an excuse for anyone to stop being a backer. We're still getting by the skin of our teeth, and I still got to pay taxes in October. So please do not interpret this as like, oh, Noah's a big success now, I can pull my $5. Oh, for the love of God, no, please don't. I don't know how I'm going to do any of this and also like work at Target. So just know like that is still where we are. Okay. On that note, that so cheery note, let's do the credits. The associate producer of the podcast is Parker Sella. Music for No Proscenium is by Chris Porter of the Speakeasy Society and Solar the Podcast. Special thanks to Siobhan O'Loughlin for voicing our intro. The No Proscenium podcast is written, edited, hosted, produced, and mixed by yours truly. I'm Noah Nilsson, and until next time, I'll see you at the show.